Hi again, this is Katrina Kramlich with Inspired Spectrums, and this video I would like to talk about the sensory system of a child with autism because it can be very, very different than the sensory system of you or I. So first, let's just start with discussing the sensory system. So your sensory system is what helps you interpret your environment. It's what helps you take in all the information around you and filter it into and integrate it into some information that's going to help you pay attention. And your body probably does this pretty flawlessly. It takes in the sights, the sounds, the smells, and it filters it all, and it helps you pick out what's the most important thing to pay attention to. A child with autism can be very different. But let's start talking about the senses. So first of all, we have sight. We have sound, taste, smell, touch. We also have the vestibular system, which is our sense of balance. It's what helps us not fall over. We also have the proprioceptive system, which is how we know where our body is in space. It's how I know that this is my finger. It's how I know this is my shoulder. It's how I can feel my butt in my chair. It is yeah, that's what it is. Then I also like to talk a little bit about the energy, your emotions, because children with autism are very good at picking up on the energetic sense. So there's also that, and that can also be very overwhelming for them as well. So you or I can interpret all of these different senses that we're getting in on a daily basis, and we can filter it through. A child with autism is very different than that. And one of the hard things for us is that we don't exactly know which child is having which sensory issues, right? Again, with the spectrum, it's a spectrum of sensory difficulties too. We do know that most children experience sensory difficulties, but we don't know what. But for example, I want to tell you about what some of it can look like for children with autism. So let's say they're having some sensory issues with their eyes. I've heard people say it seems as if the walls were moving. I've heard people describe it when they talk, they can see colors as words. I've heard people say that their vision sort of switches and all of a sudden it looks like they're looking at people really close, or it looks like they're looking at them far away. As far as the auditory system goes, sometimes people can hear conversations that are 3 rooms away. Sometimes little tiny sounds that to you or I might be non-existent sound overwhelmingly loud, like fluorescent buzzing, like bzzz. Sometimes they can hear all the sounds that are happening in a classroom, the traffic noise outside, the scraping of a chair, somebody flicking a pencil. All of those noises, the teacher talking, come in at the exact same volume. So instead of being able to understand that the teacher's voice is what we should pay attention to, they can't figure it out because all the sounds sort of come in all at one volume. Let's see, what else is there? Smells can be particularly overwhelming. Some kids really like to smell. They might have an underactive sense of smell, and so they really like it. But other kids, just the smell of perfume can just be way over the top. So you do want to try to pay attention to that as you're getting dressed in the morning. You want to wear something or keep your sense to a minimum just in case until you get to know your child more. You are going to be the person who knows your student the best, right? So you want to pay attention to how they may be interpreting the world, what their sensory challenges might be, so that you can eventually help them, right? So just more about that. Let's see. Oh, if they're having a touch issue, some kids can be really bothered by tags or seams in their socks. Little things that, again, we take for granted can be just overwhelmingly unbearable to a child with autism. That's why you might get some kids rocking like this. They might not be able to feel their butts, so they're moving around on their chairs. You might get kids rocking because their vestibular system is off. So a lot of the times, these behaviors that we're seeing children with autism do is actually them trying to take care of themselves. And what can happen is, they try to a certain extent, but then it kind of gets to a point of sensory overload. And there's some great videos on sensory overload if you want to look at them on YouTube, what can happen. But basically, you're either going to get a child who's going to shut down or he's going to act out, right? Because he's trying to take care of himself, and it just gets to a point where it's like on a day where you just have a crazy headache and things just keep happening, It can be like that. So ideally, you want to be back in the classroom. You want to be back into your playroom and not in the classroom when your child gets to a point of sensory overload. So you really want to get to know them, get to know their signs, get to know what it may be like for them, and using some of the techniques we'll talk about later. But you want to really understand your child's sensory system the best you can. It's really, this is one of the challenges. Hopefully one day there might be something that is going to help us more understand children's sensory systems. But you want to be, your child's advocate. So find out where they're at. Hopefully get them back into the playroom before sensory overload. And one sign for that is actually ears. I've heard that ears will turn red if a child's starting to get stressed out. So that's one thing you can watch for. And then you also want to be in the playroom most of the time, because that's going to stop the overload from occurring as much. Because you're working in a non-distracting playroom, you're not going to have as much visual distraction, you're not going to have as much auditory distraction or anything like that, and you're going to help a child, you're going to be able to help them take care of their body and give them enough sensory input to be able to work at their optimal state. Just a few interesting other side notes that these kids have the ability to just dive into details. So something like if you're watching a video of me, they might be completely distracted by the light reflecting off my necklace or something like that. So you can imagine what a classroom might be like, with so many little details that you can get sucked into and find it really hard to participate what's in the classroom. And that's why you're going to be their advocate, sort of guiding them through any outside classroom, and then also working with them in the majority of the time in the playroom to really help them be able to concentrate. So hopefully that helps you. I really think that understanding a child's sensory system is one of the keys to working with a child with autism. If you can really respect that it's completely different, then you're going to be able to work with them in a way that's going to work best for them. And again, every child is different, so it's really getting to know your specific student so that you can find out what works best for him individually. Hopefully that helps.